Go around though. Yeah, that's great. That was cool. Yeah. But Lauren's like, Kat, can I go in? And the friends, oh yeah. Just go up the ramp.
We had some late correspondence on the agenda packet regarding the mobile home park.
Here.
All right, Chair, we are ready when you are.
Okay. Call this meeting to order at 1:30. Thank you for joining us for the Finance, Admin, and Police Subcommittee meeting. I'll do a roll call around the table. I am Mayor Todd Lands. To my left.
Jason Ferguson, the police chief. City Manager Kelly.
Councilmember Bagby.
Reverend Thompson, Assistant City Manager.
Susie Holmes, Finance Director.
Bob Cox, citizen.
Thank you very much. All right, moving on to public comments. The public may speak in person on any item not listed on the agenda at this time. Do we have any public comments that want to be made? Seeing none, we'll move forward. Any communications that are new, David?
There was an additional communication added regarding the mobile home rent control ordinance, and it's online. I can refer to it when time comes.
Thank you. And move on to approval of minutes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Second.
Anyone against it? All right, move on to new business. E1 Russian River Reuse Collaborative, R3C.
Thank you, Mayor and Chair. There's a memo in your packet regarding this item. Really is intended. This item is agenda really is an introduction, but we're also want to solicit feedback on a couple of points. The town of Windsor has led up this effort to establish what's called the Russian River Reuse Collaborative. The intent was to have wastewater utilities work together and collaborate on some common interests regarding particularly getting funding for projects.
So we can-
Got it. Got it. Don't leave meeting. Here we go.
So up on
Well
the,
done, Chief.
you hired chief.
You're back. You have a future.
The town of Windsor established this kind of collaborative effort, really to kind of work together, share common interests, and staff has been attending. I've attended a few meetings as well as our city engineer, Vanessa Apodaca. In meeting, there is a discussion about the opportunity to collaborate on regional projects, particularly those that are funded by either the federal government or the state. And there's a model down in southern Sonoma County, which also involves Marin County and Solano County, called the North Bay Reuse Authority, where they've been successful in getting funding for individual reuse projects. And part of that is based on the perspective that the federal funding agencies want to see kind of these larger public benefits from the funding that they're putting towards these efforts. So the goal is kind of collaborate with some of our regional wastewater partners. Currently participating agencies include Cloverdale, they're just kind of heading south, Healdsburg, Windsor, Rohnert Park, Santa Rosa, and Sonoma Water. One of the thought processes was to memorialize this this working group by way of a memorandum of understanding, or MOU, and as part of that, establish some annual funding that could be put in towards administering the organization. The group actually put forth a proposal to, of, $10,000 in annual dues, see if that was something that was supportable. So one of the concepts was, to bring forward was, does the idea of establishing a reuse authority, in northern Sonoma County, make sense? Does it offer some benefits to us as the city? And if so, is there, reason to, support that effort with some funding? This wouldn't necessarily have to come out of this year's budget. It's the MOU, there's a draft MOU that's being floated around for review. It's still kind of in the works. I didn't want to put it on the agenda yet. Ideally, we would bring that back for input, but there is this conversation around whether there would be some interest in all of us collaborating on funding to help kind of start being able to do a little bit more planning efforts, and maybe even support future grant application. The town of Windsor has already committed resources to preparing a grant application to fund this planning effort. So they're putting a lot of time and legwork into this. And so I think they're kind of trying to garner whether, the other cities that would be participants would be willing to kind of participate with them in this planning effort. So ultimately, this effort, I think, would be something that we direct towards our wastewater enterprise. So if there was a cost contribution, I think it would most likely come from the wastewater enterprise. So there may be some argument that water could contribute. As an aside, and kind of tied to this, we were notified last week that we were recipients of funding from the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, and the USBR is a key funding agency in these reuse efforts, and they do, or traditionally they've had fairly significant sums of grant funds available, and it's been tough for small jurisdictions like us to compete for those, because they really do want to see big projects and big efforts. And even one of the thoughts which is kind of embodied in what we saw awarded was it's Windsor and Cloverdale, and that's kind of what they're looking for. So this kind of speaks to that. If we can form an entity, again, it doesn't have to necessarily be a funded entity, but we still identify ourselves as this group of that we're organized, we're working together, we're collaborating, but it's also a reflection that recycled water in particular is becoming a much more valuable asset, and it's being looked at as kind of our next source of water, whether it be for environmental purposes, whether it be for agricultural, or whether it be for municipal uses. So I'll kind of pause there.
Or aquifer recharge.
Yeah, aquifer recharge.
Geysers projects.
There's a lot of different opportunities here. So really just wanted to introduce the topic. This is something staff has started to commit time on. So kind of wanted to check in whether this is something you want us to continue to participate in. You see merits in it. You think we should continue to advance an MOU, and if so, bring it back here and ultimately on the council for council's consideration. And the name Russian River Reuse Collaborative, we're kind of trying to come up with a name that kind of had a ring to it. And that's where the R3C, you could call it the 3RC, but
You keep trying, David. Good start.
Yeah.
That's the summer meat and potatoes on it.
Right.
Right. So again, the draft MOU, it's not included in your packet, but we will wanted it to be more thoroughly vetted by the groups before it's brought forward for your review and input. But again, just kind of seeking your preliminary thoughts on. Sounds like a good idea. It doesn't sound like a good idea. Investing in this is an opportunity. Is something we would support or not support.
More on the table.
Certainly. I think that this is incredibly timely, and it's a really great opportunity. I mean, I know that you're not asking for funding now, but honestly, $10,000 annually coming out of our sewer fund and or our water fund, because, and I think it could be easily justified that at least part of it could come out of the water fund, because you're not using, you're finding a use for recycled water, and I'll just point out that there is no such thing as wastewater, all water is recycled. That's probably the logic, process, which is a natural process. All water is ultimately recycled, and it's really your attitude, toward where that water's been last that is problematic for a lot of folks. But when I look at a possible, $10,000 annual investment and then access to federal funding for the projects that we just don't have funding for locally, yeah, it's something that I'm definitely interested in. I'm sure that we would be able to maximize that investment, and you see the return of possibly millions of dollars being invested in our infrastructure. So, and given that, yeah, when small jurisdictions just aren't eligible for the significant funding that we need, partnering with and making this a regional approach to reusing water that we used to consider to be wastewater. It's just, there's no such thing as waste anymore. Compounding that, looking at what is the future of Potter Valley project and the future of dams being pulled out. It is incumbent upon us to use all of our resources as efficiently as possible. So I would support, moving forward with caution, but definitely pursuing this, because this is really the only way that the community of Cloverdale is going to be able to qualify for the grant funding that we need to improve our infrastructure. We're not going to be able to do it on our own. That's just my opinion. Correct.
Well, on the surface, it seems like a great idea. If we spend a little bit to get more, ultimately, and be more organized with other cities for efficiency. And I know we got the grant to do the tertiary treatment, so it is coming, so.
These, like you said, with politicians pushing those dams out, not supporting keeping them in some way, we don't have a choice. We're going to be running out of water for the amount of people that are here.
Yeah, it's good.
So I think it's worth looking into. I'm still not supportive of the water side of it, paying for it yet, but I'm wide open and looking for reasons why.
Absolutely.
That's where I'm at.
And one thing I just add, they came up during the discussions was that at least the North Bay Reuse Authority, they were being offered significant, additional funding from the resource agencies, more than they, I think, even kind of asked for. So it seems like there's a real desire for the federal government to fund it. So in the end, it may not be something that we have to pony up the annual dues if there's other funding to support it. Could very well pay for itself.
Chief, I think. Public comment, anything?
No, thank you.
All right, well. You're looking good direction?
Yeah, absolutely.
E2, mobile home rent control ordinance.
Did you get where did that correspondence land?
I can bring it up, David.
Okay, so included in your packet is a copy of section 5.36 of the municipal code. It's referred to as rent control in mobile home parks. This item was agendized in part because staff has begun dedicating time to reviewing the ordinance. Council may recall that Mr. Mike Dean, who's in attendance, spoke to council in public comments in regards to our mobile home rent control ordinance. Mr. Dean has raised a number of questions about the implementation of the municipal code and those sections of the code that direct council to establish a commission to oversee rate increases at mobile home parks. I shared with Mr. Dean that, since the ordinance was adopted in 1986, there's been a lot of changes in the law, certainly significant changes in the legislation. And I'm not sure, whether the ordinance in our municipal code as it's currently written kind of addresses current legislation, current regulations. And therefore it was necessary to, have a city attorney conduct a review. I did discuss and have been discussing with the city attorney's office. I know they are actively reviewing the ordinance, but they haven't developed a formal legal opinion on it yet that I can, I mean, it hasn't been done yet, but at which point, we consider how that can be shared. But Mr. Dean has raised a number of questions about the implementation of the ordinance, and in the packet is, I won't go through all of them, has just asked a kind of a long list of questions. From my research that I've done, it's been very challenging to find any of the background information about this ordinance and whether council did indeed establish a rent review commission. They very well could have established one. There could have been some, or approved the language to establish one, but may never have formally established a commission. But without a clear record, it's very difficult to identify what was done, since it was so long ago. It's over 30 years ago. With that said, I did offer to Mr. Dean that what I'd like to see the forthcoming is some proposed recommendations from our city attorney's office on how to address this kind of aging municipal code language, and how we address the requests of Mr. Dean, who has provided information indicating that his mother has been subject to rate increases, and clearly those have not been submitted to a commission appointed by council for review. So with that said, I think it is important to understand the current legal standing of the ordinance and the municipal code and determine next steps. I think maybe rather than trying to rectify the past, it's a function of how do we going forward, how do we want to address the issue of rent control and mobile home ordinances. I think we're all well aware that the county has had a long-standing mobile home rent control ordinance. They've amended it, from time to time, and a number of other cities. The current practice amongst cities in the county, as well as other counties, are to allow for an annual rate increase in the rental spaces based on some kind of reasonable metric, which is usually the published consumer price index, and allowing mobile home park owners to raise rent spaces based on the CPI, but no higher than that. Usually the function of staff is then to provide and document the CPI for the previous year and provide that to mobile home park owners, and providing the allowable rate adjustment that can occur. But at this point, because I want to be sensitive to Mr. Dean's concerns and issues, wanted to bring this forward for discussion. Obviously, there ordinance development, usually we receive direction from the council before we just proceed on that kind of an effort. And there's a number of policy issues that you'd want to consider as part of developing a new ordinance, versus how much time do we want to try to address the historic kind of issues around the current municipal code, and address some of the past rate increases. So I'll pause there, Mayor, Councilmember, then you may want to hear from Mr. Dean on his concerns.
I would actually like to hear from Mr. Dean because I wasn't at that meeting, so if I could. Mr. Dean, if you're available, I'd like to promote you to the panelist. You can speak to us on your relative's behalf.
So he's coming in here.
Thanks, Scott. Going.
Takes a moment to shift over. Let me know a second.
There we go.
Good afternoon. I appreciate you guys' time. Thanks for letting me join in. Thanks for letting me listen in. Mr. Kelly's been really good about getting back to me promptly, and I appreciate all the effort he's put in. I understand that you guys are busy, and any time allotted to something that we're not expecting is time away from something else. So I recognize that, and I appreciate you guys taking the time. My initial concern started, I'll do a quick little background. I have been helping my mother-in-law who got very sick in the last year. She was trying to renovate a camper or trailer for her daughter. And I would travel down. I was part of the California National Guard for 10 plus years. So I would always travel down. I live in Oregon because of the nature of the business I do. And I came down to help her fix up this trailer. Long story short, we got to the point where it was ready to sell. And I reached out to an old friend who owns a real estate company down in Petaluma, and he sent one of his brokers up. She was concerned not in the asking price for the trailer, but how much rent a particular park was charging in the city limits of Cloverdale. She said that it would be the hardest thing to overcome to sell this trailer because the rent in Cloverdale was not conducive to its surroundings. She said that the rent in Cloverdale was competing with rents in Petaluma, in places that historically we see higher values because they're closer to San Francisco, right? Nothing against Cloverdale at all. It's just most people who try to work in San Francisco, there's only a distance they can drive. Are you guys hearing me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so that originated all of my concern. This is all new to me. I am not a lawyer. I've tried hard to look into the ordinance. I've tried hard to look at the Constitution of California. I'm a detail-oriented guy, so I'm looking and reading and learning every day. And I understand historically this is an older ordinance, but it's also been ratified, on your website. It says that this was ratified, under this section June of this year, right? So again, I'm not a lawyer, but if stuff is in law, at what point is it binding, right? Everything is based off of the way this thing is written, is based off of what the base rent was back in 86, January 1. So to establish that, that's the base, and all increases are supposed to be that base plus the amended amount that's approved by the park each year, right? To not exceed once annually. There's a lot of other stipulations in the ordinance. I'm sure you guys, if you haven't read it and you guys are gonna be part of this, I'm sure you guys will be reading it like me. And there's some language in there, like Mr. Kelly said, that has to be interpreted. Language of the law is a little different than what we're used to, as you guys, I'm sure, are well aware. What I'm asking, Mr. Kelly asked me, what am I after? What do I want? He asked me, do I want you guys to take action against the parks? Not really. What I want right now is I want just information, based on the ordinance. And I know you guys have said that it hasn't been implemented. We don't have a current board. I'm wondering if we're going to implement a board. And when the board is implemented, they have investigative powers, right? Police powers for the incorporated area. And we would like to know if and when any petitions for rent increases have gone through, right? And if they haven't, how is it that we're falling under Sonoma County, right? Because that's what we're kind of, that's what I'm assuming is happening, that we're falling underneath a county unincorporated ordinance that I would think that a city of Cloverdale would not be subjected to. So lots of questions. More than anything, I'm responsible right now for my mother's rent. And so that's why I'm taking question in this. I'm trying to do the right thing. I'm paying her bills. She's very, very sick. And I kind of want to know what to expect. That's kind of where I stand.
Thank you, Mike. This is really the first I had ever heard of this was because of you. And so it's good for us to learn and find out something that's on our list of ordinances that we didn't even know about. And I know David's been working hard at it with our legal staff, trying to figure out where to go from here and how to make it right. I have a quick question for you. Do you know what the rent was in '86 and what it is now? Just curious. And this is more personal than for this group.
No, Mr. Kelly asked me if I could, submit a window of what the increases have been. So I had access to about the last 4 years. And so then I did the math, just seeing, right? 1 year it went up like 4.9%. I sent Mr. Kelly all this. 1 year it went up 5%. 1 year, 2021, and I'm assuming it's for COVID, it only went up like 2.1%, right? So using those as a metrics, I went backwards, right? And started kind of a trial and error to try to figure out ballpark what it was back in '86, but it'd be speculation on my part, right? But it was considerably lower, right? If you do the math on a good baseline was 2019, we were paying $790, and using a 5% decrease annually from that to '86 puts us somewhere in the ballpark of $150 to $170. And I understand that would be totally inappropriate for someone to pay that rent. But I think that we need to find out what that number is for us to have, some clarity on where we're at, and maybe if there was a huge jump in between somewhere, right? Because we don't know if the board ever conducted business. We don't know, per the ordinance, it was very, very structured on what was supposed to happen and how many days it was have to happen and who was supposed to be notified, and the clerk had to do this, right? So we don't know if the mail went out. We don't know if the owners were notified of this, and if not, why? And if they were, and then they just realized that nobody was paying attention, right? That's also, something that should be noted, and just figure out a good way going forward. I know that Sonoma County right now has moratorium on rent increase right now. I don't know, and that obviously won't cover us, but if they were using them as a guideline, right, the road should go both ways.
Any other questions for Mr. Dean?
Mayor, I will add, he did provide the data as he shared in his comments regarding rent increases. And as he did show that from 2019 to the current, the rental rate space has increased from $790 in 2019 to $942.14 in 2023. So you're looking at about $152 increase, and there were some administrative changes where they took water out of the monthly rent at $20. So that kind of, if they kept water in there, it'd be slightly higher than that, but it does validate what is indicating is, seeing rent increases anywhere from 5% to 2.1% during the last 5-year period of time. These, I haven't checked, these may or may not mirror the CPI. They're certainly close, but I can't tell without validating where they are relative to officially published data. Great.
Thank you. All right, well, if there's no other questions, Mike, thank you for your time, and just know, as you know, Dave is working on it, and our legal staff is working on it, and we'll let you know when we start getting somewhere so that you can participate in the conversation.
Yeah, I think for a future meeting, what I would like to see is, obviously, I want to get, I'm assuming that Alex will be working on this since he's the real estate specialist at the mayor's office. So I'd like to report back and just see what the status of our the various components of the existing ordinance language that we're seeing here. We may never be able to unearth what action was taken or was not taken dating back so far, and there isn't actually anybody available with the institutional memory to even ask them at this point. So I want to hear back from Alex, and then just kind of through the lens of what is going on in other municipalities right now. At some point, we determined that Mr. Dean's mother-in-law said at Seven Palms, for example, places like that throughout the county and the region are really essential housing resources for low income and retired folks. And we're seeing, of course, I think the worst case scenarios in Petaluma, where owners are requiring property and then hiking up the rents. This is good timing for our community to get ahead of this and find out, what is the legal status of the current ordinance languages, what action may we need to take, because we're at the point in this region where the one of the most important things that we can do on the housing front is preventing people from becoming homeless or preventing people from becoming housing insecure. And so this is the, Seven Palms and places like that are an important places to that are good, that need to be protected to ensure folks are housing secure. So I'd like to send staff on a fact finding mission, find out, as much as we can about the current status of the ordinance language, and then best next steps that we might want to take as a community.
I also asked really what the county was doing with their ordinance right now.
Yeah.
So to see how we compare.
Yeah, exactly. Just like we do with comps. Is go out and find out, it's like, what's the county doing? What are other communities doing? And I think it's incredibly timely because, these properties that used to be, very affordable and very reasonable are getting pressure because the surrounding property values are going up exponentially. So with looking through that lens, I'd like some recommendations from staff as to next steps and what other jurisdictions are doing.
Anyone else? Mr. Dean, thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate you, and we'll be speaking soon.
Yeah, I thank you guys. Have a good days, and thanks for allowing me the time to speak.
Alex, do you have anything on this? Good, thank you. All right, we will move on to E3, code enforcement report.
Yeah, I can take this one. So we're entering our second year with our contract with Robert Smith for code enforcement. I included in the packet is some of the summaries of where we are at this point and the current cases. So there's 6 scheduled for hearing right now. 10 or 9 are working with the cities, so we can avoid going to a hearing. 10 are in preliminary notice. 3 are being investigated, and 38 are closed. We have had 2 hearings since we've started with this process with Robert Smith for a total of $66,000 and some change outstanding orders. We haven't collected any of that money. There's been several requests by owners to reduce that fee, where we've kind of discussed just covering our costs and removing the punitive portion to that, and I think we've been okay with a couple of those going forward. So that's kind of where we are. I mean, right now, we're in year 2. It's been a little bit of an adjustment, having a code enforcement officer driving around. I will say that they're all complaint based now, you know how that goes. But there's been some where we had, maybe 8 or 9 on one block where a new person had moved into that block, and so that caused quite an uproar. So we worked through that. So I mean, we brought this at the mayor's request to do a review. I think we want to move forward and continue on. I think we're need to re-up the contract and look at the money situation and just discuss how we want to move forward. I mean, personally, I think it's been good and bad. I mean, it has taken away some of the tasks from staff. And then I think they've been fairly responsive to people who've called. I mean, some people will say they haven't and they haven't received the notice. They've been fairly professional with the 2 hearings. And it's been some relief to staff, and just in terms of having this done through this process. Part of the initial scope was to amend our ordinance to have this new system versus which makes it a little more expedited in terms of getting to a hearing. So I think that's it. I think probably some of the successes were, the car wash. We were able to get that cleaned up and cord that off. We were successful in getting an award, but there's been no payment on the awards. So I don't know if you have any questions. I mean, it's kind of just an overview of where we are. You've had some concerns, Mayor.
Yeah, I have. Anyone want to go first before me or?
Well, just to clarify, so I'm looking at amount ordered by hearing 66 and 0 collected. And then an expensive 62. So, I'm not interested in this being a profit center. I'm looking at it being interested in being at least break even, but we have to collect to break even. And yet, some of the big standout properties that were really community problems, they finally saw action. So,
And there's still some that aren't.
Yeah.
That are slow.
That are still being slow, yeah. And I think that part of that is that there have not been consequences heretofore. Therefore, people still think that they can be slow. There isn't a realistic expectation that this is going to be enforced. And if you don't get in line, there are going to be consequences. And I think that takes time. So I'm willing to give it a little bit longer, but there may be, differing views. As long as we're breaking even, I would be happy, but we haven't collected on money we're owed yet, so that is problematic.
Yeah, I just want to mention that I think Councilmember Begley, you're referring to page 6.
I'm referring to page 1.
Oh, yeah, page 1, and then there's page 6, which shows the total outstanding orders. Then there's 66,000.
It's just a summary on the one, but this is.
Okay. Just speaking to the ordinance was updated with additional procedures that provide, an alternative. We would traditionally go through a route where you would get multiple notices, and more often than not, they kind of got ignored.
Yeah.
And it would be, notice 4. And so, I know there was some frustration from members of council because, we'd wait 30 days, then the code would say notice again, okay, 30 more days. And so it would take a long time. I mean, someone could just draw the process out. And we amended the ordinance.
A time-tested strategy.
Yes. So I guess the only way to beat government.
That's right, is I outlive them. Outlive them.
It's the updated ordinance provided for kind of a more expedited process. where now we engage a administrative hearing officer. And the hearing officer actually reviews all of the data regarding the complaint or the nuisance, along with a log of what time and energy was spent in the costs, current costs, but also the notice of violation component. So there's kind of two pieces to the costs. One is direct costs that we incur in addressing the nuisance, and then there's the notice of violation, which is an additional per day per violation charge. So I kind of view we might have some flexibility on the charge piece, but maybe, I always see if we had any kind of costs, we try to recoup those. But what we've seen is this adds a level of formality to the process that we didn't have before, because and independence, and since we're bringing in this hearing officer that's basically functioning as a member of the court system to kind of hear and rule, and that adds time, but it gives the hearing or the violation pretty considerable weight. And so that's what I just want to kind of point that out, that's what's behind exhibit number 6. And we did receive correspondence from like one of the property owners' attorneys, seeking some resolution of the fee amount. And I think the council was firm that wanted to charge the full amount. So there is some flexibility, but generally we do seek to recoup those costs once they've gone to an administrative hearing officer, though they all have the opportunity to address it before they even come to that point. And there was no, before there were charges. So
Some of the, the not the chronic ones that we've been after for years, I think that was where the council was a little more firm, like, no, we want the full. But some of these other ones that we've only gone, this is the first time, it's more, we might be more flexible to just cover our costs than what to get to that one.
And the reason I wanted it brought back is with the contract coming up. I want to make sure that he was on track with what the council's desires were, because it was very specific when we talked about it, that it was not to be a nitpicky, going after the neighbors, proactive position. It was, we have a lot of blight, we have a lot of businesses with major issues, things along those lines of these chronics that we talk about, that we wanted those affected. I didn't want to have to walk into 17 neighbors' houses, knocking on doors and apologizing because we're going door to door talking about weed length and where the car is parked on their property. It's things that it became a nitpicky thing with neighbors up here in Jefferson Springs, over in Tarman Track, over here. That's what it became, is this little, well, he says, she said, and they call on me, so I'm calling on them, and now we're having to do all this homework, spending our time and our money. That was not the purpose of the code enforcement officer. So I want to make sure that we're either on track or we're limiting, or doing something different to control, or if this is what the council wants, then that's what we do. But we're spending a lot more money than just the code enforcement officer. There's 2 of them, there's your time that you're spending. I don't get reimbursed for my time dealing with this on a daily basis.
I know, I hear you, and I agree with what you're saying. It's been a balance. I think we've tried to convey that to them. I think it's gotten better more recently. I mean, everyone who gets one of these notices, they're going to react, and if they know you or they know Melanie, they're probably going to get a call. At that point, I'm willing to go out and take a look and see, and if it's not egregious, maybe we can work it out quicker or not through this process. And they've given us the opportunity to do that, the Robert Smith and his crew, to here's some new ones, do you want to go take a look at those? And we have pulled back on some of those that we didn't think they were being a little too stringent for, for our community. One thing that was fairly positive, I thought, was, he did help us get the DOT from the Oaks,
Mhm.
which, we did pay for the audit, but he sort of picked it up from there and drafted a letter that resulted in, 30-something thousand.
And how much was the audit? Any idea?
Uh, 2,000 each or
Yeah.
per hotel, something like that.
Yeah.
Which is something we did for all of them. It's not necessarily code enforcement, well, when they come back owing us money, he did pick up the mantle on that and help us. So that was positive. Apparently he is working with the owner of the Chinese food place. I mean, the resulting paint job probably wasn't great, but the color wasn't really something that we
Yeah.
regulate.
Text
But,
about that.
I don't know, it's up to, I'm happy to take direction. I mean, if we go back to the old way, we can do that too. And Rafael can pick it up and do what we were doing. And the most serious ones rise up in that scenario. Where it's going, the notice, like David mentioned, it ends up at the council at some point.
Councilmember Baker, what do you think?
Yeah, it sounds like we might be getting some of the kinks worked out, but I have to agree. I mean, the reason that we really went in this direction is just staff's lack of bandwidth to deal with things, just horrible blight, like the car wash and other properties. And I mean, we have to consider that, and some of the homes where we've had some of the hoarding issues too. We have result in rodent issues, and now we have reports of West Nile virus being present in town. So the idea that, we're gonna go into another rainy season and have, a hoarding issue with pots full of water that are gonna result in, mosquito breeding, and that could honestly endanger public health. This is probably not the time to dial back on that. So I'm willing to continue with it and kind of refining the relationship with the contractor, in that what we're really interested in are the really egregious issues of abuse. They're just violating the social contract. They're impeding the enjoyment of people's properties who are their neighbors, those kinds of things that are attractive nuisances that then require additional resources of law enforcement, those sorts of things. That's what I want to see emphasized. And if staff thinks that they can make that work and it's advantageous, I'm happy to support it. But if you think it's costing too much, then I want to hear that too. If you think that you can take this on, take it back in-house, then I want to hear that. But I don't know if I'm necessarily hearing that level yet. So
I think it is possible to do that. One of the issues I see is all of these are somebody complaining.
yeah.
These are somebody's filing the form and sending it in. So, I mean.
And in some cases, we wouldn't know that there's an attractive nuisance or a public health problem unless someone does. But if people are abusing it, I think that's to be expected.
And I think the
We
mayor's
had that
correct.
911 call is, the guy couldn't get to his fiance concert, Florida. Yeah, that is a.
I do think there's
That's
retaliation
a-
on that. There's
Yeah.
retaliation. I mean, maybe one way is for. I let them know, we want to know the ones you're getting, let us see and give us an opportunity to at least go by there and, determine the level of severity and how fast we want to move and how we want to proceed. I don't want to be like selective, but at the same time, some are way worse than others. And I think there's some room there for us to get involved. And it is our time, but at the same time, we might save time on the back end of the process. So we're here for whatever direction you think. It's been up and down with it. Yeah, I'm not gonna say that it's been a bed of roses. It's been positive and it's been negative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are good wins and then there's a lot of crap.
I think we got.
Are we doing the 80-20 rule? Is this the 80-20 rule? I'm hearing 80-20. Anybody else?
All right, any idea how much his cost per year of not just Robert Smith, but all of his hearing officers or anything?
It's all
Investigative.
It's all in.
Yeah,
What is the
yeah.
total? So that was all in there for that 63,000, whatever, yeah. Right. That was it.
60, is it the 62,320, is that it?
Yeah.
Is that it just, yeah.
Yeah, as of the last billing,
Okay.
it did. Don't have all his latest invoices yet.
Kevin, how many hours do you think that you've spent on these cases in a year?
I mean, maybe not too much really. I mean, well, we went out, so if I have to add all that up, you know, for a year, maybe 25 hours, something like that.
Well, what is the risk too of us not being able to handle complaints or not having a good, and then what's our legal liability for not having an adequate bandwidth for code enforcement? I would be interested in hearing back from the attorney on that. Because I think that that's also the issue, is that we actually this is what taxpayers pay for. And it's really unfortunate. I mean, actually, it's a stronger word than unfortunate, but that 20% of them abuse it. And then cause us 80% of the headache. So, we're just in round numbers. It's really unfortunate, but in a sense, it's like we are obligated on some level to make sure people are not abusing their neighbors, in essence. So, that's my concern. So I just feel like I need some more information.
I think we're on the same page with that. It is the abusers and the ones that we didn't hire them to come over here and nitpick.
I mean, if you'd like, I mean, we could invite them, keep this on the agenda, or we can just keep it the way it is. It's fine.
We already did that once.
Yes, we did.
I think that staff can give them clear direction on that. That I think that you guys can be very clear on that. So that's what our expectations are, and that's what we want to be concentrating on.
I want to also keep this in mind when it comes time to start talking budget,
Yeah.
because we're making cuts, so if this fits in, something else will have to go.
I just don't want to pay more on the back end because we don't have it. So that's the kind of analysis I'm looking for.
Kind of cost benefit.
Yes.
I do have a little comment, if I may. I spoke with a friend of mine who's been in his home since 1957. He's a 93-year-old gentleman. He got a very threatening letter about a very picayune type item. And it shows here that it's been taken care of, but of course, with that threatening letter, he made sure it was done right away. That was the only contact he had, no notice in advance or anything like that, just he advised nothing, just this threatening letter. It damn near gave him a heart attack. And I suspect a lot of these that I see down here, I just look at addresses and I think a lot of those are the same thing, little picky stuff that kind of maybe have been complaint driven. Boy, that's a whole lot of complaints, that kind of stuff. And I don't see, I don't think anybody who hasn't seen this, 2 motorhomes on Hillview Drive that have been there for at least 10 years that don't move. And I don't see that address anywhere in the list, so, and they're still there, so something's wrong.
Yeah, it really
They're
is
parked
supposed to
on
be
the street, that's
complaint-free.
illegal,
Well, typically on the street is.
and storage.
And I don't know which two you're talking about, but what we're experiencing on the street situation, they only gotta move them an inch.
Yeah.
But, yeah,
And this process starts over.
but that's taking advantage of, yeah,
Right, but again, on a complaint driven call,
Yeah.
much of these are the same way,
right,
right? They want some kind of response. So our response is to go do that as it relates to these
Right.
types of things. I think there's a couple of challenges with this, the fact that we've already had it kind of creates now some conforming
right.
that's taking place. I kind of have some concerns that if it goes away, what now are we resorting back to? And what are we doing? I mean, it's kind of a catch-22, to be honest. I understand everybody's position here. From the police standpoint, a lot of that then falls back on us for
And,
these
you know,
calls.
and that's.
It might actually be more expensive if you look at on billable hour per billable hour for an officer to be taken away from what he or she could be doing otherwise.
Yeah.
Where, you know, we could be, Bob could handle it.
Yeah.
So that's what I want to see.
This is similar to the, and I say this, the North Bay Animal Control contract.
Yes.
I only say it in terms of this.
Great.
There was a need, but then there was overstepping. When, and I even had people make comments, well, you're only supposed to go after the bad dog owners.
Great.
Well, how do you define that and who is that? The person letting their dog in the park off the leash? I don't think we wanna go down that. Right, so what are we, and this is kind of the same thing, unless we know exactly what is egregious. And what we want accomplished by the
Well, I have
council's
a
decision.
feeling that something is, it just absolutely sales in my neighborhood would never go over in Jefferson Springs, so that's kind of, it's also my neighborhood, the expectations that folks have.
It's a tough balance, because I get the 72-hour parking all over the city, right? Because if you enforce one, everybody expects you to enforce them all.
Right.
And it's just, it's a really difficult challenge. Who's the most egregious? Let's approach that and let's deal with that. You know, the other ones become this really hard dynamic of how do we address those two?
I'm very happy that we have a code enforcement situation.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and how to address it, that maybe needs to be worked on.
Well, and it's funny, the situation we talked about, you can see on the sheet of 17 addresses where we had to go door to door. You could walk down the street and you could pick out
Mhm.
which house was different and probably
Yeah.
initiated
Exactly.
by the way the yard was shaped, by the new person that had lived there versus the guy that built the awning in 1980 and he and his neighbor share it. You know, well, that might be a violation, but it's been there for 30 or 40 years. You know, it's like, okay.
You can see on the closed ones, closed by city.
Well, the difference between closed and closed by city,
Those were ones that,
Came into compliance, first we determined some were considered legal non-conforming.
okay,
we told them
Legal
that in
non-conforming.
August.
okay.
They've
The story of my house.
And Bob, to your example, I did speak with,
Is that the wood, is that the wood pile?
yeah,
It's
and
not my, I don't think.
and you're right. He was very concerned and I tried to address his concerns and you know. We do have a heart and we are flexible, and I encouraged him to communicate, you know, he just needed more time, and I said, hey, no problem.
Yeah.
And I said, I support that 100%. It's tough, because we've been asked, well, why can't you come knock on my door? Why can't you tell me
I
personally?
get that, it's not enough time.
Right, and that's where it becomes challenging, and you're also putting code enforcement staff in a position where sometimes you're gonna encounter some folks that aren't happy that you're knocking on their door, and, you know, we have to approach that with some caution.
Yeah,
Um,
as a census taker, I know exactly what's going on. We don't want to not on anybody's door.
I think he has some pretty good feedback, right?
Yeah.
I don't know where we're, I don't know where we're at.
If I can just summarize, I'm gonna continue to. I'm gonna meet with them and say, we're really interested in the real egregious ones. If you had, just let us know the list of new ones. And, you know, if it's, let us just take a crack at it or just to take a look at it and, maybe there's another way we don't need to do the threatening letters. If that sounds okay, and then we'll just, maybe we can keep this on the agenda if you wanna.
I'd like to have it come back with more information.
All right, and I don't see any hands up. Dave, can you switch over to the attendees, we can just make sure it's on. Okay, great.
Hi, Derek.
All right,
I met your brother last week, so. I know for.
we'll move on to the CPAC facility use agreements.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. In your packet is a draft of what's referred to as the First Amendment to the facility use agreement between the city of Cloverdale and the Cloverdale Performing Arts Center. The city and the CPAC have had a long-standing lease agreement that was originally predicated on the city's funding improvements to the CPAC. We subsequently entered into a lease agreement whereby the CPAC provided, you know, all of the support for the city council and planning commission to utilize that facility for council meetings, public meetings, and the planning commission meeting. And the annual payments were based on a worksheet that identified the costs that they incurred for providing those services. One was kind of the basic rental facility, but it included things like lights, an AV technician, the cleaning, and, you know, host of services that based on an hourly rate reflected this annual lease amount. The CPAC board approached us that there was kind of multiple interests. One was they expressed an interest in going back to kind of well, let me say this: during COVID, the CPAC, of course, you know, the city went remote for a period of time, and we didn't use CPAC for meetings. But also because of the closure of businesses that occurred, you know, the CPAC no longer held performances at the CPAC, and basically they let go of their AV technician staff. And once we kind of reassumed meetings, of course, we purchased, you know, additional AV equipment. We now have operational cameras that enable us to record and televise our meetings. But we have relied on an AV technician to basically provide the kind of the tech services for running Zoom, maybe not so much Zoom, but certainly running YouTube, live streaming, and originally providing all of the video equipment. Fast forward to today, the board, you know, again, expressed an interest in kind of continuing to provide those services, and it was also an opportunity to kind of relook at the costs that they're incurring. And as a result, what they've come back with was that, you know, their costs have gone up, and we don't disagree with that. And we've developed an agreement where the annual lease would increase. I think it's $7,400 currently. The new proposed lease payment starting January 2024 would be $12,960. What that would be offset by is the costs we currently incur in providing in AV for Alan. Alan's planning, it has been planning, he's put on hold a couple of times now, his retirement, and you know, thinks that you know, the system is in a position where it can be readily managed by the CPAC board. So I think what we've come up with in terms of a revised lease agreement is actually very fair to the city. It could ultimately save us some costs, but it also provides the CPAC with additional revenue that's based on the costs that they incur. And I think, you know, part of this discussion has, I think, transitioned them a little bit to think about how to maybe approach leasing their facility to other community groups and
Yep.
from a business perspective.
Yep.
So
For that, so thank you.
I mean, I hope that's the case.
Yeah, no, if we get this together.
I know they want to, you know, collaborate more on just, you know, anytime we make any kind of improvements or changes, whether it's even you know, you know, TV, any other kind of AV improvements, they just want to make sure we coordinate with them on that. And I think you know, why we made every effort to do that in the past. It was hampered a little bit during COVID because it was, you know, it was changing staff on their part, and keeping that communication open was not easy, but ultimately, this agreement would need the approval of the city council, and we wanted to bring it forward here for just review and your feedback. This has been provided to the CPAC board. It, you know, kind of went through various iterations, and I know the mayor led some of those conversations, and I think we've landed at a point where it's so far mutually acceptable to them and us. One aside is that they've also identified that they, for the performances, they want to kind of amend the stage a little bit to, because there's some challenges, I think, with them taking up and taking, you know, putting up and taking down their stage props. And so they want to use a little bit more of the stage than they currently do, which would necessitate us revising the table layout and chair, and we.
That's the next item.
Yeah. So,
You can just do it all as one if you want.
Mike has been working
Mine has been on Wayfair.
on that, and we
It was for business.
we approached, and my recommendation, we approached the Trope Group. The Trope is, you know, they're professional furniture folks, got all the dimensions to them, and they provided some alternatives in terms of kind of tabling designs and a number of staff that could be supported in what's a relatively smaller space. So one kind of leads to the other, but I just wanted to introduce that properly, and I just recommend the subcommittee take up first the lease agreement, and then we can talk about the new kind of table layout. But I brought them together because they kind of were really discussed together. Was the idea that they had these operational costs that have gone up, necessitating increase in lease rates, but they also want to use more of the stage, which would require us to amend the layout, and also probably look at how council meetings are staffed.
So they want to use more space behind the curtain.
That's right.
They move all their stuff, so it's pushing us forward.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right off the edge.
Closer to
Right out the front door.
you know
We're
what
gonna end up in the scout hut.
what we've identified
In terms of tennis meeting.
is
It's far from me though. I'm sorry.
yeah. What we kind of landed on is seating for 5 council members and 4 staff. Right now, we support basically up to 7 staff members. And so we would envision that not all staff would have to necessarily attend in person all council meetings. Be there for, you know, any consent items, make sure they get approved, and you know, otherwise, which is consistent with other cities, if the staff don't have an agenda item, they don't attend the council meeting. But that's something that's been our past practice, and certainly we want council's input on if you want all staff there at all times, we can accommodate that.
We need the chief there every time.
Yeah, you start. He's happy to serve first, I don't care. Councilman Black, you want to go first?
Sure. Well, just on the contract itself, just we probably want us to hit that one first.
Yeah.
I would, I did find a usage error in paragraph F on the first page. I think their facility at the last sentence should be THEIR. Their facility use agreement. So maybe we want to apply some AI and make sure we've got that was just the one I found. And then I had a question about the internet service at the building. I don't think, I mean, I have pretty good download speeds and pretty bad upload speeds, and I'm probably equidistant to the knock too. And I don't know if I need to have like that best broadband that's available, but I wonder if we wanted, I'm wondering if we want to stipulate that they've got to have it, if we're not paying for a piece of their internet connection, which might be just cumbersome and far too detailed. We might want to stipulate that they need to have a plan that meets our minimum needs for our AV. And then we might also want to consider just going ahead as the city providing city-sponsored Wi-Fi at CPAC that everyone can use for. But I know that we have there is guest Wi-Fi, but it's pretty lousy most of the time.
Yeah, so.
So it just might be, I'm just wondering if we considered including that in the contract, or just something just to ensure that we've got the level of service that we need for public meetings.
Right, so we did discuss, actually it was kind of a fun discussion. Not sure the history again, but the city pays for.
They do.
We
I think
maintain.
again, that was kind of my question, and I think that that's appropriate. I don't have a problem with that. So if they want to, but did they ask to have that memorialized in the contract, or?
I don't know that it was specifically enumerated since we're providing it, but that's probably something maybe we should look at and see that I would make sure that issue's addressed.
Make sure that that's addressed so that we don't end up getting it downgraded to the point where we can't use the building. So that's my concern.
Right, since we maintain it, and so if there's an issue, we call out Comcast.
Okay.
It's on our own.
It's on the
Yeah.
city, okay, yeah, I
And-
wanted to make sure.
We did, when we were transitioning to the new AV equipment, we did upgrade the service considerably,
Okay.
the bandwidth. Cause we wanted, YouTube
Right,
consumes a
YouTube,
lot,
yeah.
especially for live streaming, so we wanted to make sure there was no glitches in that. They always had their wireless modem connected to our wireless modem, so it's a wireless off of a wireless.
Yeah,
And it, in essence, we just recommended eliminating their, because it was, basically it was constricting.
Yeah.
The bandwidth of
It was-
their device
yeah.
was
it was
less,
reserving all of the bandwidth, so, yeah.
was less than what, so. What we do probably still need to do is make some upgrades in terms of the commercial Wi-Fi router that we have on our internet service.
And then would that be maintained by KLM or? Okay, which? That's what they call the airline, that's not, is that the, yeah, it's like KLM,
Yeah, we certainly can ask them
Okay.
to, do routine service checks.
yeah,
Usually when issues come up, it's a call to Comcast.
yes, I'm sure. I'm sure.
So far, I think other than a couple of periodic issues, for instance, we called CPAC because internet went down here. So, we called Comcast because of internet service here, and they went to the CPAC.
Mhm.
And CPAC was like, well, why are you here, Comcast?
Oh,
Well,
great.
but
Yeah.
besides that, I think the bandwidth that we pay for has been pretty good.
Okay.
It's like 200 down and
Yeah.
25 up.
It's as good as it's gonna get here until we all have fiber to Cloverdale,
Yeah.
so, okay.
Which was identified to be sufficient to run YouTube and run all of our laptops on Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've experienced, it seems like any of the video issues that we experienced have been pretty well.
Pretty okay, I guess I have to say it's pretty okay, but I just wondering if if you wanna look at memorializing that in the contract so that there aren't any, so that we have control over that. Yeah, but I appreciate the work that you did on this, because I've been saying for years, it's like, well, if you get this thing camera ready, then you can start marketing it to for other meetings or for other events and things like that need the same sorts of facilities that we require, so thanks for heading that up. But I'm pretty happy with it, and also just from the conversation that we had earlier about the trailer park ordinance, I'm happy to see it, that the rent increases being tied to CPI, because I just think that that's fair. That way we don't have to, do this over and over again.
Right.
So we're finally I think we learned enough lessons dating back to 2008 and 2014 to have a pretty solid contract, so. Yeah, I'm pretty pleased with it.
Yeah, reading the old contract,
Mhm.
the city definitely had the skin in the game on that one. We had no reason to renegotiate.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was very poorly written for CPAC. But I want to thank Michael for spearheading this and making sure that he did 99% of the work,
Mhm.
and then David coming in and helping finish it up, so.
Really whipped it into shape, guys, so good job. And then on furniture, I just don't care. No, I mean, I guess really, my only interest would be that that I kind of like the more broken up tables, just because then we're flexible if we do need to move it to a different community meeting. You know, if we needed to haul it over to either the Vets Hall or the Scout Hut, that it's configurable in
The first one? the
yeah,
kind
kind of those, the
soft
funny
angle?
those polygon.
Yeah, there's a few pluses and minuses to both. I'll share my screen right now just so you can see it.
Which Prius is that one,
So option A is they gave us maybe 5 or 6 options. A and B were the more viable ones. I agree. This one is they're smaller tables. You can see 3 here and then 2 longer ones on the side. It'll make it so that all, for this option, for example, all council members will be able to not, and staff won't have a poll. Like you'll notice that Kevin often at our current meetings has a pole at his knees, so he's not able to fully sit at the table. So everybody does have space to sit. It's relatively easy to set up. All these fold, the legs fold down. This one is a little bit wider than option B, which I can scroll down to, which is just a configuration of 4 tables, a little bit more. People are used to this kind of formation. However, it does face staff inward, which has some positive and some negative as far as where you're sitting maybe in the public. The diagrams that our engineering tech helped us make down here, the gray tables, it's kind of hard to see on this diagram, but are what we currently have. But as you all are aware, these gray tables are a little closer to the edge.
Yeah.
To be pushed up is going to make that even more problematic, which, like David said, is going to be one of the reasons we will need to shift our table formations around. Both A and B should fit. You can see this one's about 18 feet in length or width, depending on which way you're looking at it. Where option A is a bit longer. We don't have full dimensions here, but it's a little bit wider because the tables aren't turned in at a 90-degree angle like option B. Option B also needs a little bit more curtain, and I do want to be clear that this price does not include the curtain. They had some form of privacy things that can attach to the tables, but you'd still see feet, you'd still see legs, you'd still see chairs. So we felt kind of doing what we do now and having a curtain made. I thought it'd be nice to get one printed similar to what we do at the fairgrounds, so we can have the city of Cloverdale or any other just the logo printed on there. But yeah, these are the 2 options. The Trope Group kind of
Did
put
those
them up.
include the little racks for all, like the chairs and the tables, or that's like without being able to rack them and move them?
Well, I'm sorry, what was that?
It does, that price is just like, that's unbelievable. I'm just wondering if it includes racks so that you can stack them and move them.
I agree. Yeah, this doesn't include chairs, so this is just tables.
Yeah.
I agree that is a
My head down to Target.
I like, can we just
sticker
like?
shock as well. I'll be honest that they reached out to me a couple times since to see if we're still interested, and that's one of the reasons we want to bring it forward, because that is quite an expense. I looked online briefly looking for tables that are similar. I didn't quite find the exact ones, but I didn't see, because they're not building us custom tables. I imagine they're getting them from somewhere.
I'm sure we can do it at the yard.
But
This is, I know, it's just ridiculous.
and they're both pricey. You can see the option A is maybe $1,000 more than option B. And then another decision that we'd like to know from council or from you here is, obviously these 5 chairs are spoken for with council members. Same with our planning commission. We were thinking that likely this side would remain the city manager, city attorney, a seat possibly for our student liaison, so they can still participate, which leaves an open seat, which can either be the presenter from staff. It could be me at the city clerk position up here, which many councils do where they're attached to the dais. And then our staff would come to the podium down at the bottom, and they can be waiting in the audience until it's time to speak, or they can come to this empty chair when their item's over. That's just something we wanted to have your thought on as well today, but about all I have. And again, I wanted to.
Can you find online with the comparable tables you were saying? I didn't catch.
I did find a few of these shape tables. I again didn't do a deep dive. We wanted to get your opinion on them first. I didn't find ones that were collapsible or that had wheels. They were more like ones you see in a classroom that are fixed legs. We definitely want the ability to have them fold so we can easily transport them in so that they can be stored in CPAC easily.
And that was just for kind of a full transparency of the discussion of the lease agreement. There was concern by CPAC, the new chairs we got, they're pretty big.
Yeah,
And
they're ridiculous.
yeah, they use a lot of storage room, so they're concerned about the consumption of storage space. Our previous chairs, I think I know Councilmember Becky, you kind of prefer the smaller ones.
The smaller one has
um,
more, yeah, there, and I mean, I can completely understand, it's like they probably take up twice as much room, those big, huge, they're ridiculous, they're just too big. I'm not playing video games.
So looking at the table design, Mike, it's a little bit of an illusion, I guess you'd say, almost, that 12.5 feet wide. That means that right here, I'm touching a council member on each side.
Yeah.
So the two long tables together, if you add probably about a 30-inch width or 24-inch width on each side, you're actually adding 4 more feet for people to be able to sit at option B. Yeah. So if you took the two and widened them out a little bit, it'd actually give you more space
Well,
than
then
the
you
other
get a
ones.
corner too, I mean, you could kind of.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of that first one, but.
But I think that's more.
Yeah, that's just gonna be what works.
I
I do not like $8,376 though, this is ridiculous.
Well, we know for sure the square tables you can find.
Yeah,
Correct.
You see there's just 4 of them, their lines are easily delineated, but yeah.
I'm gonna challenge you to.
I think we can find them. As you can see, these are kind of angled legs. It's hard because
I'll sit on a Pilates ball, I don't care.
it just it might make it hard for the mayor right in the middle, having that,
Yeah.
you got the crack right down.
It is what it is.
Sucks.
It is what it is.
You know what,
you know?
but you can also we could put down a mat or something and.
Right. I mean, and we can look at other options too if we're not wanting to go with the trope group. We can find maybe a 12-inch table and 2 sides. One aside on this one that we thought would be problematic, but
12 foot.
Yeah.
if you spread out these chairs, these people are very kitty cornered. You won't have as much room in front of you if this person moves
Or
over.
you put anything, you're gonna have to tape it out on the stage that they want us to, on their footprint, so. Yeah.
So would we be more, I mean, I can definitely, well, I guess my first question is, the trope group, do we want to proceed with them with either of these costs? And I can give them some ideas of what we're thinking, or do you want us to do it on our own?
So,
Mike, what I hear is support for option B
the layout of option B
with a lower cost.
way lower cost.
Okay, then I'll do some research on some tables that, are still foldable.
Okay.
I'm gonna throw one more, Michael, if you don't mind, and see what you think, Melanie, so it blends both. So if you take the tables from option A and you make them your end tables on option B, it gives
They're at an
you
angle.
a different angle versus a 90-degree gives you a 45.
So one of these going to the,
Yeah,
Those
on the ends.
correct.
and I think that likely work on the stage because we do have quite a bit of room. It's and again we'll tape it out before we make any purchases because I definitely don't want us to be, we're already cutting it close to the edge of the table and I don't like that. Okay, I'll throw some renditions up there and hopefully we can.
Big table and 2 rhomboids.
I think the angle is good.
Big rectangle, 2 rhomboids.
And around $1,000.
Yeah. $999.
Play Price is Right on that one. Okay, then I'll be able to, come back to you guys, before our next meeting in November with some.
Facebook Marketplace.
Thank you, Michael.
As far as, just so I know, is the staffing okay with what, I know it's something that staff was thinking, like, as far as who's attending and where they're sitting. Because we don't have enough real estate to have all of our senior staff up there at once. So I'm just curious with that,
Other board meetings, they kind of get up and change as needed. So I don't think, I mean, getting up.
Keep one up for presentation.
Yeah,
One seat open for presentations for whoever's needed up there.
Yeah. So we have our student liaison and we have no presentations. Kevin gets to join us.
there you go.
Kevin or Michael.
But,
well,
you
that's
know,
what, I mean, I would love to join you at the days, because right now I can't even see half of you, but I do need the space for 2 computers, and I know I'd start taking over, the student liaison would feel real crowded, or whoever I'm sitting next to, so. I don't know, well, we might visit where I can remaneuver myself so I can better see you all, but, and maybe this table setup will alleviate that based on where the TV ends up, but we'll work it out and get it back to you.
Thank you. Any public comment on that? Okay. Dave, who's the new attendee? So we can keep them.
Shannon.
Perfect.
yeah, I hate to drag a meeting out, but can we take a short break? All right.
Bob, check on those 2 trailers.
Yeah.
Those motorhome.
Still recording. All right, here we go. Standing items, F1, update on the painting.
Okay, this item is in regards to painting, City Hall as well as the interior of the police station. The painting of City Hall is underway. I hope, that everybody finds that City Hall is much more attractive than it was previously to being painted. But expected to wrap up, if not today, I think tomorrow, with the kind of final elements. And then I believe they'll be moving on to the interior of the police department, using existing paint to kind of redo some of the surfaces that were disturbed during the lighting project.
Great. Questions, comments? That's nice, thank you. All right, F2, bonding capacity for City Hall.
Okay, the IFM Advisors has been busy wrapping up the survey. Actually, they are expected to conduct and finish the survey this week. Will be a survey of voters, and then at that point, we'll get results and be sharing that out with the subcommittee and council.
Measure P cannabis report.
The report is included. The one thing that I would note is that we currently have one cannabis business that is more than 3 months behind. Because they didn't pay they didn't pay 2 months, then they paid a month, and now they haven't paid 2 months. So I'm working with them trying to get them caught up. They promised that they were gonna pay, but that was a couple weeks ago, so. So, no, that's where we are.
We have a process to make that, right?
Well, we talked last time about it being a 3-month, once it's 3 months, so since the due date for the one that was due September 30th was actually today, I want to give them just a couple more days. Mhm.
Okay, yeah, it's the meeting date is, looking forward to the update next month.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. It's always helpful just so that I can tell.
Okay. Any public comments? I just keep looking at you because you're the only one, so. All right, water rate revenue tracking worksheet.
Okay, included in the packet is the most recent report for water rate revenue. It's updated through the month of September. You can kind of start to see that September was the first month where we saw an increase in the year over year versus the last 2 months where we saw less revenue collected than the previous year. Of course, we did get a little rain over the weekend, so if folks are diligent about turning off their irrigation, we may see that go back down, but it's just a reflection that folks are continuing to be mindful of their water use and conserve. I think that it offers a lot of benefits, but with that said, we make our revenue by selling water, and you know, despite the rate increases, we're not seeing the corresponding revenue because folks are conserving more. But you know, we put this here for a couple of reasons. One, you know, it's transparency. We have a lot of inquiry about revenue and rates, and I think, you know, I've pointed to this several times. It's there, it's available. If anybody wants to review it, and it's also just indicative of you know, where you can kind of, by seeing the chart, you can kind of get a good overview visual of how much water the community has used by month over the last 4 years.
A very informative chart. Corresponds strangely to our heat waves.
Yeah.
In our atmospheric rivers,
Oh,
so.
Shannon prepares this.
Yeah.
I think that we're updating that.
It's very, very useful, and it's unfortunate. I mean, we're in a position where we're trying to accrue revenue based on something that we want people to use less of. It's like the gas tax for maintaining our roads. So, yeah, any regional work or statewide work that can look at how cities can guarantee their revenue, and while also, you know, helping people and helping the community reduce water usage, is strongly encouraged.
Absolutely.
So looking out for those kinds of grants or those kinds of you know, folks who are thinking about big pictures like that. I know that when we were at the Cal Cities conference, I had an opportunity to sit out on Jerry Nicholsberg's economic forecast, and one of the things that he was, the topic of that breakout was, how do cities and counties and small communities adjust to the changing revenue landscape? And I think that he didn't specifically talk about water, but I've seen that as something that we need to get plugged into, how other communities, how economists, you know, how people at the state level are thinking about being able to ensure ability to deliver these services while our customers are using less of it. So I'm gonna definitely, you know, if we see any information on that, or see any grants that could be applied for, that would help us make that transition to be more resilient. As far as our finances are concerned, I definitely would be interested in that in the future.
We can certainly follow up on that and see if we can find some information. I haven't seen a lot of grant funding around specifically kind of revenue enhancement, but we do continue to participate in what's called the LIWAP program, Low Income Household Water Assistance Program. And I think it's been tremendously beneficial for some of our customers who, you know, maybe have had some challenges paying. It ultimately helps us because it makes them whole on their bills, and that we may not have collected if it wasn't for that program. So
yeah, it subsidizes the services that we're able to
right,
provide them.
right.
So, but we're looking at regionally really being
And we're back.
Want to start the over?
No. It was, we got the audio, right?
Mhm.
Oh, then,
Great.
I'll do an interpretive dance and you can just clip it, you can cut and paste it right now.
No, I don't know what the right answer is for this because they're going to be, we're gonna have less water pretty soon if these dams go away, if the dam goes away. We're gonna create more issues and we can't pay $1,000 a month for water bills here in the next decade. So we have to figure out a way to actually maybe even be okay with saying it's time to use your water at certain times, you know, like now, when we have the surplus. So we have to find some answer here because it's not feasible the way we're going. Anyone's going, it's not just us.
And actually, I know we're talking about water reuse, but that kind of regional approach and problem solving and research and grant application is probably that we'll have to take that approach to how do we rejigger and ensure our revenue resources for our services. Because it's just that it's based on a per gallon or per unit model, and that's just not going to necessarily, that's not the best way to ensure it going forward.
We're already doing question canvas storage and everything else as well.
Yeah. All right, that's all I have on that.
All right. Anyone else have anything? Future agenda items.
We have one more.
Oh, I missed, sorry. Grants, grant writing, investment.
And,
solutions.
Speaking of.
and in your packet is the most recent version of our grants matrix. This one was as of September 18th, so it's about 2 weeks. 2 weeks dated, but it's still fairly current. And this is what our city engineering firm puts together for us whenever we receive a request from council members or we see a grant announcement. We get that over to Hawkeye at West Yost to update the worksheet. One thing that's really helpful, she'll do an evaluation of the grant requirements and, kind of with consultation with Vanessa and myself, how it fits into our work plan, kind of an assessment as to, is this a grant that can fulfill, a need for the city? And if we give it the green light, then it gets off and running. But, we try to track all the opportunities we can and we pursue those. We don't necessarily pursue every single one of them, but we do try to, again, do that assessment to determine if it's a good fit for us. And this is really just for the subcommittee's review.
I was just wondering if there's anything you in particular you wanted to highlight on that.
Well, it's kind of number one on the list was the Water Smart project, which we heard last year that we heard last week, excuse me, that we were awarded. So kind of shows you our priorities. And it's also a reflection of where the agencies, where they're putting their grant dollars. And we see a lot around a lot of funding around kind of certainly water resiliency and also kind of this kind of a lot of grant funding is put through kind of the lens of diversity, equity, inclusion, and how that fits into different policy parameters. So in a lot of funding around transportation, and a lot of that is also tied to the DEI topic of how are you going to address the underserved needs of your community and getting funding for providing funding opportunities around the concept. So that's what we tend to see a lot of is water, transportation, and kind of equity concepts in the grant space.
Thank you.
Not always a grant for everything we do that we can offset our operational costs.
I know you tried. But that's a pretty good, just that list, that's a pretty good track record, so batting average, so.
I think we've been, as of late, we've been pretty successful with the USBR. We feel like we're pretty confident we're gonna get the state component to the water recycling grant. You know, the CDG grant, some of you know, the DWR multi-benefit grant, you know, it you know, provides a lot of revenue for projects that we are doing or want to do, so it's been beneficial.
A lot of them have matches too.
Yeah.
Fairly
Yeah.
big matches, so I think one of the things I'm looking out for is something with Scout Cabin.
Mhm.
There was one that looked pretty good, but there was a couple fatal flaws in there that, I can't remember what they were, but.
No ignorance.
You're looking to we're always looking for the parks.
Yeah.
We have a lot of interest in
Other
parks.
fun ones.
Anything? Anyone else? All right, I'll move on to future agenda items.
I think, Mayor, you mentioned in the past police strategy, and I think we left it as a placeholder.
I think that you and I and the chief have had some conversations, and we don't need this on here right now,
Okay.
but.
No, if you guys don't mind, I'll give you a quick update where we're at, because as just prior to last week, we were down 5 positions. 2 sergeants, 3 officers were out. The good news is, to update you, we are getting one of those sergeants who've been out for quite some time back on next Tuesday. One of the officers has returned last week. We're getting the second one next week. And then we have a dispatcher who's deep in the background. We're hoping to get that completed and her on board by November, somewhere in November. And then Marlene, our trainee, is over halfway point of the academy. We just went down, Lieutenant Parker and I went down to do the inspections, midway point. She's doing well. So hopefully, if it continues to go that way, we should have her out somewhere around December 8th. So with that being said, where we're currently sitting right now, Lieutenant Parker is set to be appointed as the next chief of police.
On the next council meeting.
Yes,
Okay.
and then I think that leaves the opportunity for us to immediately get a flyer out for a lieutenant's position to replace him.
Mhm.
That would then ideally come in about the time I would be leaving and to replace Chris's position. So that's currently where we stand right now as far as the police department. We're happy to get people back.
Yeah.
It's hard when you're 5 people down in a small department.
That's terrible.
And I have to really applaud and commend those that continually work a lot of overtime.
Yeah.
And still do a lot of, other projects that we assign them, so. They've come through, I'll just say that.
Mayor, are you comfortable removing this item for now?
I am.
Okay.
And I don't think we're not out of the woods though, so.
By far.
Yeah, that's something that really has to be looked at.
Question for you, and I think this goes to Melanie to see how much she should supports too. Can we go do that flyer sooner for the lieutenant spot? Might take some time.
Absolutely.
I know that we need council approval, however, if it went out and then we found we didn't need it for some weird reason, we could always cancel it.
Well, Shannon's, I think, still here. Let's
see.
yeah, Shannon's still there. So we'll, Shannon is in coordinating with the chief on the flyer for the lieutenant position. So we'll get that posted ASAP.
I mean, we don't have.
The sooner the
time to-
better.
No, absolutely, and I mean, it's like, it's October 2nd, and the holidays are coming, and nothing that happens at the holidays. So.
People don't change jobs in
People
December.
do not, change jobs, do not move in December, meaning, yeah, so this is like sooner rather than later, I'd rather get it out there.
Okay.
I'd also just want to keep, as far as like budget concerns for a future agenda item. Taking a regional approach might not be out of the realm of possibility for our police department as well. I've kind of, put out and asked some questions at Cal Cities about, how many people have APAs for their police departments, and it's not unheard of. they're more in Southern California, and they're rare. But we may be in a position where we might want to, talk with the city of Healdsburg. The city of Windsor contracts with the sheriff, but if we were really dedicated to maintaining our own police department, we may need to get bigger.
And we do have a.
Yeah, you have
MOU.
an MOU, yeah, but it may come to a point where we might want to talk with the city of Healdsburg about possibly creating a JPA. Might make sense for our two cities to team up
For more of a regional.
for
police
more of a
department,
regional
those
league,
cities.
yeah, for each city. So it's 20 minutes, or, I guess it's the way you drive is probably 12, but yeah.
Where did that come from?
Yeah, look at you. You're good.
Two people driving these black cars.
Right. But yeah, don't association, so, but it might be something that we want to look at in the future to consider, just somehow being able to attract more officers and being able to staff and recruit. So, I mean, it's a long shot, but we have to explore all of our possibilities, because I think our voters would be very very upset to learn about the staff shortages, and also would be very upset if we wouldn't be able to actually fiscally, financially be able to support our own police department any longer. That would be not acceptable, so.
Yeah, I just want to make something real clear on the staffing shortages. We're not actually short of officers per se. We have them on the books. We have them in there. It's just a matter of who's sick, who's out because their wife's on maternity leave, and things of that nature.
It's just too
So
tight.
staffing is there. We haven't lost anybody per se.
Yeah.
It's just, and
But
all
the
agencies do.
The budget is too tight, and I think it's not gonna, it's bad everywhere, because people are just having such a hard time recruiting and having such a hard time supporting police departments, because of, tax bases, but so we just have to, I wanna make sure that we preserve our police department in far into the future, so that's my concern. Yeah, and I thank everybody who sacrificed. I've worked at hospitals when that kind of stuff goes down, and it's just all hands on deck, and it's just a testament to the great stuff that we do have. Meltdowns. You were able to cover it. Just make sure that they understand, that the council understands how tightly staffed they are, and that it just, I don't want to see it go on at all, humanly possible.
I think they'd be in agreement.
Yeah.
So. Like, I don't know if this would be a future agenda item for this or not, but I want to talk about budget a little bit, because I think we need to kind of try to get ahead of it. And one of the things I was thinking of, and I want a little feedback, maybe, I don't know if we should give feedback now, maybe you guys can give opinion, is having a breakdown of the budget which showed the necessary versus the wants when we do it, and have a very itemized budget, because we're not going in the right direction.
Obligations versus elective.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
I think that a lot of it, a lot more of it, sorry to interrupt, but a lot more of it is obligated than maybe it meets the eye.
right, and that's what we need, and that's because of the requests and things that
Yeah.
we talk about on a weekly basis of all these people, emailing what they think they're obligated to. We need to get the real, truly keep the lights on budget, and all this other is fluff, and we need to make that clear and decide from that what we're going to keep, because we have to operate in the black. I'm not here to fail.
Yeah, I think there's,
We're not here to fail.
given the timing, now we're here in October. And we've got, 2 more months in 2023. Then we kickstart budget process probably in February, late January. With starting budget workshops, it would be a good time to spend this time to do some kind of review work of the budget in preparation, so that when we do the budget workshops, we're kind of tuned up and ready to go, it's not an introduction, it's we dive in. I think what we can do is bring forward, and we'll break it down into digestible steps, more of that, budget in a glance, big picture. And then kind of dive in.
And then the 500-page book you slam down,
Yeah.
that's what I look for, to be honest. I look for those numbers, that I want to see them line by line, dollar by dollar, and I know most people don't. And it's easier to see the at a glance or big picture, but I think we're at a point now that council's gonna have to sit down and say yes and no to some really tough things here, make some tough decisions.
Right. So I hear, what you want as a future agenda item. Maybe we could call it.
And you can decide when.
Budget update. Yeah, well, I think, starting again, kind of high level, moving down, and then we get a little bit more into the weeds. Because there's a lot to digest with the general fund, the water enterprise, sewer enterprise, airport, and all the other special funds is. Use this also as an opportunity where we can encourage other council members not necessarily to participate in the meeting, but review what we talked about and get up to speed on the key budget elements, but then drill down where we stand from a fund balance perspective, both where we anticipate, where we expect it to be July 1, and where we anticipate being June 30th in anticipation of the next year's budget. Because we're also working on the audit, and the audit's going to be really critical to see where we landed June 30th of last year and help inform our fund balance. Because the other part of the fund balance is not just looking at the total, it's what is the categories of the fund balance and how that's broken down and into the different elements. So I think if the approach works, we'll start from big and go down to kind of more a big picture, and then get into the weeds. And we're gonna do that over the next several months in prep for that budget workshop in February.
It might be a third category too. Kind of nice to have, but like something that's some pieces of infrastructure that,
Or some things it's
that-
an investment in the future. Maybe we wouldn't see the benefit immediately. That's where the difficult choices are often made.
But it's good to have this information so that when we are building it, we can label each
Yeah.
thing.
You have your spreadsheet and column, they're color coded or something. You
Yeah.
can see what it is, or however you choose to do it. I don't care, but it's just one of those things that we really need to know that. No, we don't have the $10,000 to give to Lothman Sonic or whoever else is asking, you don't have, it's that type of thing. The history center's coming at us for 75,000 or whatever the number was. I would love to.
Well, and also we
Can't.
know, just based on Susie's work projecting out to the future, we've known that we're going to have this really tough 2, 3, 4 years, and then we're going to come out of it. And so it's not that we might have to say no. It's a terrible time to have to say no to some of our community partners because they're in terrible shape after COVID. But this has been coming for a while. This is our pension obligations. There's a number of other, things that are just coming due. We knew this was going to be a very difficult couple of years that we have to find a way to get past. And it's, we're going to have to absolutely trim in order to come out the other end and be in the black. We've known this has been projected for several years. So, if there is money for it, there is money for it. But if there are then other ways that we can partner with our community partners, like, maybe we can't just give them an outright grant, but maybe we can provide a small amount of local match so that they can go out and make themselves eligible for grants that actually bring, resources into the community. Those are the difficult choices that I think are going to have to be made in the next 2 or 3 years. And then council's just gonna have to put their boots on and get it done. That's why we're here.
Sorry, I didn't mean to make it go.
No, it's just realistic.
It is.
Yeah. I just have one other item for future agenda item. I just like to look at some of our operations and transitioning our, we're just operating in like 1998 operations as far as like getting, email attachment after email attachments, not using OneDrive, using links, really taking a look at our operations, transitioning away from using email attachments and forms that are really antiquated, and really looking at making sure that we're not doing double entry and really streamlining our workflow. That's gonna, I think it's gonna just, some work up front. It's just something that needs to be done. I think it was set aside because of the COVID emergency. It's something that has been brought up in this committee for several years, and it's time to, you know, it's time to get our operations a little bit more streamlined and more efficient. So I'd like to, yeah, have that agendized for a future meeting.
What else? I'm looking down my list, to make sure. Anyone else? And still the same two attendees, so, Mr. Collins. All right, we will adjourn 3:29. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate you.